There were always 3 coffee mugs on our table, but somehow I was still the extra one. Ryan Mitchell had turned that thought into a joke years ago because jokes were easier than admitting it sometimes hurt. Every Sunday morning, he walked the 6 blocks from his apartment to Cole Bennett and Mason Brooks's place, carrying something unnecessary, bagels, donuts, or whatever strange seasonal coffee Mason had texted him about at 7 in the morning. Today, it was maple pecan pastries from a bakery downstairs. "Your third will has arrived," Ryan announced as he pushed through the unlocked door. "You are late," Cole called from the kitchen. "By 4 minutes." 5. Ryan checked his phone. "You are becoming unbearable." Cole was an alpha who approached breakfast with the seriousness of a corporate meeting. Tall, calm, and annoyingly organized, he already had eggs on 3 plates and coffee in 3 mugs. Mason sat on the counter nearby, wearing an oversized college sweatshirt and arguing that pancakes counted as a balanced meal if blueberries were involved. He was an omega, warm where Cole was reserved, spontaneous where Cole planned everything 3 days ahead. Together, they made irritatingly perfect sense. Ryan had known Cole since college and Mason almost as long. He had watched their friendship become love, watched their bond settle into something quiet and instinctive, and stood beside them through every important moment. He had never resented their happiness. That was what made the strange ache harder to explain. Ryan was a beta. In a world where alpha and omega bonds could create connections deeper than ordinary instinct, betas were considered wonderfully uncomplicated. No scent-driven destiny. No mysterious pull toward a mate. Ryan had always liked that about himself. At least, he told himself he did. "Ryan." Mason's voice interrupted his thoughts. "You disappeared again." "I am literally standing 8 feet away." Mentally disappeared. Ryan reached for a pastry. "That is called thinking. You should try it sometime." Mason threw a napkin at him. Cole caught it before it reached Ryan and placed it neatly beside his plate. "Children," Cole muttered. This was how Sundays worked. 3 mugs, 3 plates, 3 people arguing over nothing. Later they would probably watch a movie. Mason would steal Ryan's blanket. Cole would complain about both of them talking through the ending, and Ryan would go home pretending he never noticed the moment Cole and Mason naturally leaned toward each other when they thought nobody was watching. By 9 that evening, rain had started tapping against the windows. Ryan collected his jacket from the chair. "I should head out." Mason looked up from the couch. Something changed in his expression so quickly Ryan almost missed it. "Already. I have work tomorrow." "So do we. Some of us require sleep." Cole glanced toward Ryan from the kitchen, strangely quiet. Ryan slipped on his jacket and reached for his keys. The familiar joke came automatically. "Relax. Your permanent third wheel will return next Sunday." Nobody laughed. Ryan looked between them. "Okay, tough room." Mason stood. His face had gone pale. "Wait." Ryan stopped with his hand on the doorknob. "What?" Mason pressed one hand against the center of his chest, confused rather than frightened. Cole crossed the room immediately. "Mason, I am fine." Mason looked past him directly at Ryan. "It only happens when he leaves." Ryan slowly lowered his keys. "What happens?" Mason seemed embarrassed by his own answer. "I do not know." Rain whispered against the glass. Cole stared at Ryan now too, his expression unreadable. Mason swallowed and finally said the words that changed the room completely. "Why does it hurt every time you leave?" For several seconds, nobody moved. Ryan kept one hand near the doorknob, while Mason stood beside the couch, looking almost annoyed with himself for saying something so strange out loud. Cole was the first to recover. "What exactly are you feeling?" he asked. Mason shook his head. "I cannot explain it. It is not pain exactly. More like something pulling tight." Ryan forced a laugh. "Maybe your body is finally rejecting my personality." Mason did not smile. That unsettled Ryan more than the confession itself. Cole studied Mason with the focused attention he gave anything involving their bond. "When did it start?" "I do not know. Weeks ago, maybe longer." Ryan turned from the door. "Weeks?" Mason nodded. "I thought I was imagining it. And it only happens when I leave?" "Not every time. Mostly when you leave suddenly, or when I think you are upset." Ryan stared at him. "That makes absolutely no sense." "I know." Cole's gaze shifted to Ryan, and for one brief second Ryan saw something unexpected there. Recognition. "What?" Ryan asked. "Nothing." That was definitely not nothing. Cole crossed his arms. "Last Thursday, When you called about your car breaking down on Interstate 90, I knew something was wrong before I answered. Ryan frowned. You saw my name on the screen. No. I reached for the phone before it rang. Mason slowly turned toward Cole. You never told me that. Because I assumed it was coincidence. Ryan looked between them. Good. Coincidence. We solved it. Everybody can stop being weird now. He opened the door. Mason inhaled sharply. Ryan froze. The sound was small, but Cole heard it too. Close the door, Cole said. Ryan did. Almost immediately, Mason's shoulders relaxed. The three men stared at one another. That is officially weird, Ryan admitted. Mason sat down slowly. Come here. Ryan hesitated. Why? Because I want to test something. Those words have never led anywhere good. Still, Ryan walked back into the living room and sat in the armchair across from the couch. Mason closed his eyes. Move farther away. Ryan stood and walked toward the kitchen. Mason's expression tightened. Ryan returned. Mason relaxed again. Cole watched with growing concern. Mason, your bond response is changing. Ryan stopped. His bond with you? That is what does not make sense, Cole said. Our bond should not react to a beta entering or leaving a room. The word beta landed harder than Ryan expected. It should have reassured him. Instead, it reminded him exactly where the invisible line had always been. Cole and Mason shared something Ryan could witness but never understand. Whatever was happening had to have another explanation. Maybe you are stressed, Ryan said. Maybe I have been around too much. Mason opened his eyes. That is not what I said. No, but maybe I should give you two some space. Cole's expression changed again. This time Ryan caught it clearly. A flash of resistance, immediate and instinctive. Do not, Cole said. Ryan blinked. Cole seemed equally surprised by his own words. The room went quiet. Ryan looked at Mason, then Cole. You both realize you are making this incredibly uncomfortable for the one person here who does not have mysterious bond instincts. Mason leaned forward. Ryan, when you walked toward that door, every instinct I have told me something important was leaving. Ryan tried to answer, but Cole spoke first, his voice quieter than before. Mine did too. For the first time in all the years Ryan had known them, being the third person in the room did not feel like standing outside their bond. It felt like somehow, impossibly, the bond had noticed him. Ryan spent the next 4 days trying to prove that Sunday night had meant nothing, which would have been much easier if his own body had agreed with him. On Monday morning, he woke at 6:17 with the strange certainty that Mason was upset. There was no dream, no missed call, and no logical reason for the feeling. Ryan stared at his ceiling for nearly a minute before reaching for his phone. A message from Mason arrived before he could type. Bad morning. Do you have a minute? Ryan sat upright. He called immediately. Mason answered on the second ring. How did you know? Ryan asked. Know what? That I was awake. Mason went quiet. I did not. Ryan rubbed a hand over his face. Right. Of course. They talked for 10 minutes about Mason's stressful meeting, and by the time they hung up, the pressure Ryan had felt since waking was gone. Tuesday was Cole. Ryan was standing in line at a grocery store after work when an inexplicable sense of urgency made him check his phone. Nothing. 30 seconds later, Cole called. His car battery had died in an office parking garage. Before you ask, Cole said, I have roadside assistance. Then why are you calling me? There was a pause. I do not know. Ryan almost laughed, but the answer bothered him too much. By Wednesday, he started avoiding both of them. He ignored their group chat during lunch. He stayed late at work even though he had nothing urgent to finish. When Mason invited him over for dinner, Ryan claimed he was tired. That night, he slept badly. On Thursday, Cole appeared outside Ryan's office building at 5:30 with 3 coffees in a cardboard carrier. Ryan stopped on the sidewalk. This is becoming creepy. Mason wanted caramel. Cole handed Ryan the plain coffee with 1 sugar, exactly how Ryan always ordered it. And you? Ryan asked. Black. Of course. Cole leaned against the brick wall. You have been avoiding us. I have been busy. You sent 12 messages to the group chat last week about whether a hot dog counts as a sandwich. That was important research. You have sent 2 messages this week. Ryan looked toward the traffic moving along the avenue. Maybe I realized I spend too much time with you. Cole was silent. The strange pressure returned in Ryan's chest, subtle but unmistakable. He looked at Cole and somehow knew, without any change in the alpha's expression, that the words had hurt him. Ryan hated that he knew. See, Ryan said quietly. That, whatever this is, I do not want it. Cole frowned. What happened? I knew Mason was upset before he texted me Monday. I knew you were about to call Tuesday. And right now, I know you are pretending what I said did not bother you. Cole's composure slipped. Ryan, I am a beta. I am not supposed to feel your bond. We do not know that you are. Then what am I feeling? Cole had no answer. Ryan looked down at the 3 coffees. 3 cups again. Always 3. Suddenly the familiar image felt less comforting than it used to. Maybe we have been too close for too long, Ryan said. Maybe I need some distance. Cole's hand tightened around his coffee cup. Do you want distance? Ryan opened his mouth, but the honest answer refused to come. No. He wanted Sunday breakfasts, terrible movies, Mason stealing his food, Cole remembering his coffee order, and the ridiculous group chat waiting on his phone every morning. He wanted everything exactly as it had been before he started wondering why leaving them felt wrong. I think I need it, Ryan said instead. Cole studied him for a long moment. Those are not the same thing. Ryan looked away because Cole was right, and somehow that frightened him more than anything else. Ryan managed exactly 9 days of distance before his carefully constructed plan fell apart over dinner. He had stopped joining Cole and Mason for weekday meals, answered the group chat just often enough to avoid questions, and spent the previous Sunday alone in his apartment pretending takeout tasted better without someone stealing his fries. Then, on Tuesday afternoon, Ryan's manager called him into her office and offered him a promotion that came with a transfer to Chicago. It was the kind of opportunity Ryan should have celebrated immediately. Better salary, bigger team, a fresh start nearly 800 miles away. Instead, his first thought was Mason hates cold weather, followed immediately by Cole will tell me to negotiate the relocation package. Ryan almost laughed at himself. Even his imaginary future still included them. He accepted the dinner invitation that evening because telling them by text felt cowardly. When Ryan arrived, 3 places were already set at the kitchen table. His usual mug sat beside his plate, even though nobody needed coffee with dinner. Mason had made baked chicken and roasted potatoes. Cole had opened the sparkling water Ryan liked. Every familiar detail made the words harder to say. You two are being suspiciously nice, Ryan said as he sat down. Mason looked offended. I am always nice. Cole took his seat. That is historically inaccurate. For 20 minutes, they almost felt normal again. Mason complained about a coworker who scheduled meetings during lunch. Cole argued that Ryan was using too much hot sauce. Ryan laughed more than he had all week. Then he remembered why he was there. I got offered a promotion today. Mason brightened. Ryan, that is great. It is in Chicago. Mason's fork slipped from his fingers and struck the plate with a sharp metallic sound. Cole became completely still. Ryan felt both reactions before he fully saw them. Mason's sudden emptiness. Cole's immediate resistance. The sensations arrived inside Ryan like echoes that did not belong to him. He pushed them away. It is a good position, Ryan continued. More money. More responsibility. They want an answer by Friday. And what do you want? Cole asked. I think I should take it. Mason stared at him. Should? Ryan forced a smile. Come on. This is probably good for everybody. You two finally get your apartment back without a permanent third while wandering through the door every Sunday. Silence. Ryan waited for Mason to roll his eyes or Cole to make some dry comment. Neither happened. Mason's expression changed from surprise to something painfully serious. Is that really what you think you are? Ryan looked down at his plate. It is a joke. No, Mason said. It is a joke you keep making because you believe it. Ryan's smile disappeared. Cole leaned forward. You have a key to our apartment. For emergencies. You used it last month to bring us donuts. That was a breakfast emergency. Mason almost smiled, but his voice remained quiet. There are 3 mugs in our cabinet that nobody else is allowed to use. Cole buys your coffee before you arrive. I keep the terrible action movies you like saved because you complain when we watch them without you. You are not visiting our life, Ryan. You are part of it. Ryan felt that strange pressure return, stronger than before. You are bonded to each other. Yes, Mason said. And somehow, when you leave, both of us feel it. Ryan stood too quickly, needing air, needing space, needing anything that made sense. The moment he stepped away from the table, warmth spread unexpectedly across the inside of his wrist. He looked down. Beneath his skin, a faint silver line appeared for less than a second, then vanished. Ryan stopped breathing. Cole was already on his feet. Mason stared at Ryan's wrist. "Tell me you both saw that," Ryan whispered. Cole's calm expression had disappeared completely. "I saw it." Mason rose slowly. "Ryan, sit down." Ryan backed toward the doorway. "No. Betas do not do that." Mason looked at Cole, then back at Ryan. "Maybe we have been asking the wrong question." Ryan's heart raced. "What question?" Mason's voice was barely above a whisper. "What if you were never outside our bond at all?" Ryan stared at the place where the silver line had vanished, rubbing his wrist as if that could erase the memory of seeing it. "Nobody panic," he said. "I am not panicking." Mason looked at Cole. "You are standing perfectly still." "That is how he panics," Mason replied. Under any other circumstances, Ryan would have laughed. Instead, another wave of warmth moved through his wrist. This time Cole noticed before Ryan could hide it. "Do not move," Cole said. "That is not reassuring." Cole remained several feet away, careful not to touch him. "I want to test something." Ryan looked toward Mason. "Why does everyone keep saying that lately?" Mason stepped closer, stopping beside Cole. The warmth faded. Ryan exhaled. "Good." It stopped. Then Mason took one step backward. The sensation returned immediately, faint but unmistakable. Mason froze. "Ryan." "Warm again." Cole moved farther from Mason while staying the same distance from Ryan. The silver line appeared beneath Ryan's skin for a second time. It was clearer now, tracing a small curved pattern along the inside of his wrist before disappearing. Ryan stared at it. "This is impossible." Mason approached again, and the mark faded. Cole's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "It reacts to distance." "To whose distance?" Ryan asked. Nobody answered. Mason tried moving across the room, while Cole stayed near the table. Warmth followed. Then Mason returned, and Cole moved toward the kitchen. The same thing happened. Ryan slowly lowered himself into a chair. "Both of you." Mason sat across from him. "It reacts to both of us." Ryan shook his head. "That does not make sense." "You are bonded to Cole." "I am aware," Mason said gently. "And I am a beta. Also aware. Betas do not develop mate marks." Cole finally sat beside Mason. "Normally, no." Ryan looked at him sharply. "Normally is not a comforting word." Cole rested his hands on the table, visibly forcing himself to remain calm. "We need information before we make assumptions." "I have information. I have been a beta for 25 years. That seems relevant." Mason reached toward Ryan, then stopped before touching him. "May I?" Ryan hesitated before holding out his hand. Mason lightly rested 2 fingers against Ryan's wrist. Nothing happened at first. Then a gentle warmth spread through Ryan's arm, not painful or frightening, simply familiar in a way he could not explain. The silver pattern returned. Mason inhaled softly. "Cole." Cole leaned closer without touching Ryan. The pattern brightened. Ryan pulled his hand back, and it vanished instantly. Silence filled the kitchen. "It responded to both of you at the same time," Ryan said. Cole nodded. "Yes." Ryan stood and paced toward the window. Outside, headlights moved along the wet street below. His promotion suddenly seemed like the simplest problem in his life. "Maybe I am not a beta." Saying it aloud felt strangely worse. His identity had never seemed important until something threatened to rewrite it. Mason stood. "Do not do that." Ryan turned. "Do what?" "Decide that everything you know about yourself must be wrong because something new happened." Ryan looked at him. Mason continued. "You are still Ryan. We start there." Cole nodded. "Tomorrow we find someone who understands bond physiology better than we do." Ryan gave a humorless laugh. "And what exactly do we ask? Why is our beta friend glowing?" "That would be memorable," Mason said. Ryan finally smiled despite himself. Then his phone vibrated on the table. An email from his manager filled the screen, reminding him that Chicago needed his answer by Friday. Ryan looked from the message to Cole and Mason. 3 days ago, leaving had seemed like a solution. Now the idea of putting 800 miles between them caused the strange warmth in his wrist to return. This time no silver line appeared, but Ryan understood something that frightened him even more. Whatever this connection was, it had already begun long before any mark made it visible. By 10 the next morning, Ryan was sitting across from Dr. Evelyn Hart, a bond specialist whose quiet office looked far too ordinary for a conversation that might redefine everything he understood about himself. Cole sat to Ryan's right, Mason to his left, and Ryan could not ignore the irritating symmetry. 3 chairs, 3 glasses of water, Three people waiting for an explanation. Dr. Hart had already reviewed Ryan's medical history and examined the faint pattern that appeared when Cole or Mason moved far enough away. First, she said, setting down her tablet. You are a beta. Ryan blinked. That is it. That is the first answer. Relief came so quickly that Ryan almost laughed. So, I am not some incorrectly classified alpha or omega? No. Your records are consistent, and nothing you described suggests otherwise. Mason glanced at Ryan as if silently reminding him of what he had said the night before. You are still Ryan. We start there. Ryan leaned back. Then why do I have a mark that apparently has opinions about where these two stand? Dr. Hart smiled slightly. Because secondary classification and bond function are not always the same thing. Cole leaned forward. Explain. Most documented mate bonds involve two people, commonly an alpha and an omega. Rare historical records describe something different. A three-person bond in which the third individual functions as an anchor. Ryan stared at her. Anchor sounds suspiciously like a polite word for third wheel. Actually, it means the opposite. Dr. Hart turned her tablet toward them. In those records, the anchor was often beta. The alpha contributed protective instinct and stability. The omega contributed emotional sensitivity and bond recognition. The anchor helped regulate the connection between all three. Mason looked at Ryan. That explains why I feel calmer when he is around. Cole nodded slowly. And why I react when something is wrong with him. Ryan looked between them. Hold on. Are you saying their bond was incomplete? Not incomplete in the sense of being false, Dr. Hart said. Think of it as a connection capable of expanding. Cole and Mason formed a genuine bond with each other. Your presence may have revealed a second structure that was always possible but had not awakened. Ryan looked down at his wrist. Why now? Emotional bonds often become noticeable during periods of change. You were creating distance. You were considering leaving the city. That may have made a connection you had ignored impossible to overlook. The Chicago email suddenly felt heavier in Ryan's pocket. Mason asked the question Ryan had been avoiding. Does the mark mean Ryan has to join us? Dr. Hart's expression became serious. No, Ryan looked up. No. A bond response is information, not consent. Whatever biological or emotional potential exists among you, nobody is obligated to accept it. Something inside Ryan loosened. Cole spoke immediately. Good. Ryan turned toward him. Cole met his eyes. You should never have to stay because a mark appeared. Mason nodded. Or because we want you to. Dr. Hart continued. If this is an anchor bond, forcing proximity would undermine the very stability it is supposed to represent. Choice matters. Ryan almost laughed at the irony. For years he had believed Cole and Mason possessed something destiny had given them while he stood outside it. Now destiny had apparently opened a door, and the first thing everyone was telling him was that he did not have to walk through. On the sidewalk outside the office, Mason stopped beside him. How are you feeling? Ryan looked at Cole, then Mason. Like I spent my whole life thinking beta meant I could never be part of something like this. Cole waited. And now? Ryan glanced at the faint silver curve appearing beneath his wrist before fading again. Now I am wondering whether I was wrong about what being part of something means. His phone vibrated. The reminder from Chicago was still there. Answer required by Friday. Ryan stared at it for several seconds before locking the screen. The mark had given him an explanation, but not an answer. That part, he realized, still belonged entirely to him. Ryan gave Chicago his answer on Thursday morning. He accepted the promotion. He told himself it was not running away because adults moved for jobs every day. People changed cities, found new apartments, built new routines, and learned which grocery store stayed open past midnight. None of that was dramatic. None of it had anything to do with a silver mark or an impossible bond. At least, that was what Ryan repeated while packing his first box that evening. Mason called twice. Ryan let both calls go unanswered. Cole sent one message asking if he wanted company. Ryan typed no, deleted it, then finally sent, I need tonight to think. Cole replied, all right. Somehow, being given exactly what he requested made Ryan feel worse. By Friday evening, 3 boxes stood beside his couch. Ryan was wrapping coffee mugs and newspaper when someone knocked. He opened the door and found Cole and Mason standing in the hallway. Neither tried to enter. We brought dinner, Mason said, holding up a paper bag. Ryan looked at Cole. I thought I asked for space. You did, Cole replied. So if you want us to leave, we will. Ryan hated how reasonable that sounded. 5 minutes. They came inside. Mason placed the food on the counter and immediately noticed the boxes. You accepted Chicago. Yesterday. Mason went quiet. Cole looked at Ryan. When do you leave? 2 weeks. The silver curve appeared faintly on Ryan's wrist. He pulled his sleeve down. Do not. Mason frowned. Do not what? Look at me like that. Dr. Hart explained what this is, and suddenly everything feels decided. Cole's expression remained calm. Nothing is decided. Really? Because my wrist lights up when you walk away. Mason feels it when I leave a room. You somehow know when I am in trouble. How am I supposed to make a normal decision with all of that hanging over me? Mason stepped forward, then deliberately stopped several feet away. Then forget the bond. Ryan stared at him. What? Forget the mark. Forget the anchor explanation. Pretend Dr. Hart never said any of it. Ryan laughed once. That is convenient. I am serious. Mason's voice softened. If you stay, I need to know you stayed because you wanted this life, not because some biological signal scared you into it. Cole nodded. And if Chicago is what you want, we will help you pack. Ryan looked between them, frustrated by the sudden pressure behind his eyes. You are making this harder. No, Cole said. We are refusing to make it easier by choosing for you. Ryan turned away. I have spent years being the extra person. You had each other before any of this happened. And we had you, Mason said. Ryan faced him. That is friendship. Maybe it was. Maybe it still is. Maybe it becomes something else someday. But you do not owe us that answer tonight. Ryan shook his head. I will not become part of your relationship because biology says I belong there. Cole answered immediately. Then do not. Ryan went still. Cole continued. If you ever become part of something with us, it should be because all three of us choose it. Mason gave Ryan a small, sad smile. Not because a mark told us to. For the first time since the silver line appeared, Ryan wished they would argue. He wished Cole would tell him Chicago was a mistake or Mason would ask him to stay. Instead, they respected the choice Ryan claimed he wanted. 5 minutes later, Cole picked up the untouched dinner bag. Mason paused at the door. For what it is worth, you were never extra to me. Then they left. Ryan stood alone in the quiet apartment. On the counter were 3 mugs he had forgotten to pack. One belonged to him. One was Cole's. One was Mason's, left there after movie night months earlier. Ryan stared at them until the silver line on his wrist slowly faded. For years, he had believed being left out was his greatest fear. Now, with Chicago waiting and nobody asking him to stay, Ryan discovered something worse. He finally had complete freedom to leave, and he had never felt less certain that leaving was what he wanted. Ryan lasted until Saturday afternoon before admitting that packing had become an elaborate way to avoid answering the only question that mattered. His apartment was half empty now, yet the 3 mugs still sat untouched on the counter. Every time he reached for one, some memory interrupted him. Cole setting Ryan's coffee beside his plate before Ryan even asked. Mason complaining that Ryan always made the drinks too strong. Sunday mornings when nobody questioned why there were 3 places at the table because there had always been 3. Ryan finally sat on the kitchen floor beside a box labeled Chicago and asked himself the question he had been avoiding. If the mark disappeared tomorrow, would he still want to leave? The answer came immediately. No. That frightened him because it was also the first answer that felt completely his own. At 7 that evening, Ryan texted Cole and Mason. Can we talk? Their reply came less than a minute later. Yes. Ryan expected them to invite him over. Instead, Cole asked where Ryan wanted to meet. The choice mattered. Ryan suggested the small 24-hour diner where the 3 of them had spent countless late nights after college. When he arrived, Cole and Mason were already sitting in their usual booth. Mason had deliberately left the seat across from them empty. Ryan slid into it. For a moment, nobody mentioned Chicago, bonds, marks, or destiny. A waitress brought 3 coffees without asking because she still remembered them. Ryan almost laughed. Apparently, the universe has committed to the number 3. Mason smiled. We are not discussing the universe tonight. Cole nodded. Agreed. Ryan wrapped both hands around his mug. Then what are we discussing? Mason looked at him. Us. Before any of this happened. He pointed toward Ryan's covered wrist. Before that, Mark, you were the person who drove across town when my apartment flooded. You were the person Cole called before his first big job interview, because you were the only one who could make him stop overthinking. Cole looked mildly offended. I was prepared. You had 6 versions of the same tie. Ryan laughed before he could stop himself. Mason continued. You spent Thanksgiving with us when my parents were out of state. You have a key to our apartment because you belong there, not because of an emergency. Cole leaned forward. When I buy groceries, I automatically buy the cereal you like. When Mason plans movie night, he checks whether you are free before choosing a date. None of that came from a bond. Ryan looked down at his coffee. Then why did I always feel like the extra person? Cole answered quietly. Because Mason and I had a name for what we were, and the 3 of us did not. The simplicity of it struck Ryan harder than any explanation Dr. Hart had given them. Mason reached across the table but stopped halfway. Forget the mark. Forget destiny. Do you love the life we built together? Ryan looked at the offered hand. That is not a small question. No, Mason said. So take your time. Ryan glanced at Cole. And if I still go to Chicago? Cole's expression softened. Then we help you move, complain about the distance, and visit more often than you want. And if I stay? Then we figure out what staying means together. No promises written by biology. No demand that Ryan becomes something overnight. Just choice. Ryan slowly placed his hand in Mason's. Warmth moved across his wrist, but he ignored it. Then he reached his other hand across the table toward Cole. Cole looked at him, waiting. Ryan nodded. Cole took it. The silver pattern appeared beneath Ryan's skin, brighter than Ryan had ever seen it, but nobody looked down. For once, the mark was the least important thing at the table. Ryan smiled through the emotion tightening his voice. I have to call my manager. Mason's eyes widened. Are you sure? Ryan looked at the 3 coffees, the 2 men holding his hands, and the life he had almost mistaken for somewhere he did not belong. Yes, he said. This time I am sure. 3 months later, Ryan woke on a Sunday morning to the smell of coffee and the sound of Mason arguing with Cole about pancakes. For several seconds, he stayed exactly where he was on the guest room bed, smiling at the ceiling. The room was not technically his. Not yet. After turning down the Chicago transfer, Ryan had kept his apartment and taken a different promotion with his company, one that let him remain in the city. Nobody had rushed the next decision. Cole had not offered him a key because Ryan already had one. Mason had not demanded that he move in. They had simply kept choosing one another in small, ordinary ways until Ryan began spending more weekends at their apartment than his own. Dr. Hart had helped them understand the anchor bond, but she had also reminded them that no mark could define the relationship for them. So they had taken their time. They talked about boundaries. They talked about expectations. They talked about what friendship meant, what commitment might become, and what each of them wanted without assuming the other 2 already knew. The silver pattern on Ryan's wrist remained, but it no longer appeared only when someone left. Now it sometimes glowed faintly during moments of calm, like a quiet reminder rather than an alarm. Ryan walked into the kitchen wearing an old sweatshirt and found 3 mugs waiting on the table. You made my coffee wrong, he told Cole. Cole did not look up from the skillet. 1 sugar. Ryan took a sip. 2. You have used one for 6 years. People change. Mason laughed from the counter. He is testing you. I know. Cole finally looked at Ryan, and the smallest smile appeared. Ryan sat down. Months earlier, he would have noticed how naturally Cole and Mason moved around each other and interpreted it as evidence that he stood outside something complete. Now he noticed different things. Cole had bought Ryan's favorite cereal again. Mason had saved the Sunday crossword because Ryan liked doing it after breakfast. Ryan had repaired the loose cabinet hinge Cole had complained about for weeks. None of those things were destiny. That was exactly why they mattered. Mason placed a plate of pancakes in the center of the table. We should talk about the spare room. Ryan raised an eyebrow. That sounds ominous. Cole sat across from him. You have clothes in half the closet. Temporary storage. Your books are on the shelf. Cultural improvement. Mason pointed toward the hallway. Your ridiculous desk chair arrived yesterday. Ryan tried not to smile. It has lumbar support. Ryan, Mason said gently, we are asking whether you wanted to stop being the guest room. The old Ryan might have made a joke. He might have called himself the permanent third wheel and changed the subject before anyone could see how much the question meant. This time, he looked at Cole, then Mason. Neither reached for him. Neither needed to. Yes, Ryan said. I want it to be my room too. Mason's face brightened. Cole nodded once, but the relief in his expression was impossible to miss. Ryan's wrist warmed. A matching silver glow appeared faintly along Cole's hand. Then Mason's, 3 quiet signals answering one another. Ryan looked at them and laughed softly. Apparently our bond approves. It does not get a vote, Cole said. Good answer, Ryan replied. Mason reached into the cabinet and pulled out 3 familiar mugs. He placed them side by side before filling each one. Ryan stared at them. For years, 3 had seemed like an awkward number. 2 people belonged together. The third waited for the moment he would have to leave. But Ryan understood now that he had been measuring belonging by the wrong rule. Nobody had completed anyone else. Nobody had been missing half of themselves. They were 3 whole people who had chosen to build something together. Cole lifted his coffee. Mason lifted his. Ryan picked up the mug that had always been his. 3 chairs surrounded the table. 3 breakfasts waited. 3 lives had changed because none of them allowed destiny to make the final decision. Ryan smiled and raised his mug toward the other 2. The table had never needed one less chair. It had been waiting for all 3 of them.